So what I wanted to do is really kind of just give you a very, very quick talk through about some of the studios workflows, the studios that are looking for animators, and a little bit how to get into doing it. So I'm going to talk about the global landscape, really, which is the whole sort of world of animation. But why isn't this moving? Oh, bigger. Just quickly about myself before I start. I work for Toon Boom now, but I've been working in 2D animation since the early 1990s, actually. And so I've worked in a lot of TV shows. I worked on the Teenage Ninja Turtles, the first series, worked on DuckTales, the movie, this is all done in London, and loads of other stuff. So I've been doing 2D animation for a long time. In fact, so long that when I started doing it, it wasn't even digital. It was still old-fashioned, hand-drawn paper and cell animation. So I've been lucky enough to see that transition from analog to digital. So I've been working with Toon Boom now for about 5 years. And like I said earlier on, I just look after all the business in the UK and Ireland. So Toon Boom really is if you think of Toon Boom as a software company, it's like Adobe. It has a number of different software titles that but only three. We've got Storyboard Pro, which is your pre-production tool for animatics and storyboards. Harmony, which you've just seen, is the kind of the actual sort of production of 2D animation, and Producer, which is our sort of latest tool, is for the kind of management and the reviews of productions. So it's more of a kind of a way of managing a big production. As you can imagine, a big series or a big feature film, you have hundreds of artists creating hundreds of pieces of artwork every day, and all that needs to be kind of managed and tracked. So we have Producer, which kind of helps to kind of streamline the production as much as possible. I normally talk about, the global creative industry, but just kind of sort of stamp out any kind of negativity about the industry that you're all kind of going into. The creative industry is bigger than the car industry, in the world. It's a massive kind of part. It's a massive sector. And animation is part of that kind of creative sector. And in terms of the UK, this is just kind of interesting. I'll fly through these slides, these couple of slides here. There's a really interesting statistic on this slide here, which is down on the left-hand side there in that column. 12.7 million pounds an hour is generated for the UK economy. It's just the UK economy alone. 12.7 million pounds an hour is generated by the creative industries, of which we are part of. This does include things like music, advertising, film, fashion, all those kind of cool things. And so we're very much part of that. So it's not to be sniffed at at all. It's a very, very important part of our economy. And the nice thing about animation is that animation does actually fit into pretty much any kind of other sector. If you think about it, you go to a concert, you go to you see animation happening in the background. Advertising has loads of advertising is done as animation. Film and visual effects, is animation there all the time. New kind of technology like VR, AI, it's all involves animation. So it's kind of it's really at the forefront of a lot of technology as well. So it's kind of all over the place, really. It's not just TV series or feature films and games as we kind of expect it to be. It's kind of all over the place, really. And as a consequence, at the moment, there is a sort of real demand for animated content, and there's actually a sort of shortage of skills at the moment. A lot of studios, I speak to studios every day, and they're constantly looking for people to come and join and work with them. So I think it's very much a concrete and future proof kind of industry to go into. So you're all making the right choice. And like Harry said, everyone's really nice who works in animation as well. So what is there not to like? So yeah, there is a sort of skills shortage. And in terms of 2D, a lot of people say, I know, Escape, you're known very much for your kind of excellence in 3D and visual effects. But 2D has always been there. It's a very strong part of the industry. And ever since I've been working in 2D, people have said, oh, 2D is on the way out. It's dead. And this was like 30 years ago, and it's still as strong as it ever was. And I think it's something like 34% of all the animation studios in the world still classify themselves as a 2D studio above any other sort of genre or technique of animation. And I don't think it's going to go away. So there's a lot of work within 2D. And 2D is great because it's the 2D. The nice thing about 2D is that it has a very long shelf life. Hanna-Barbera cartoons are still being shown on Cartoon Network as we speak. And these were done, in the 1960s, and they still look fresh and as good as they do now as they did then. So and I think that's what investors like. So people that invest in 2D. Know that they're going to be still continue to show stuff in many years' time. It is a lower cost. Animation is expensive. It's still not as cheap as very, very cheap television or content, but it's a lower cost than sort of 3D and stop motion. And the nice thing about 2D is that it renders out to high res very, very easily. We've got studios producing 4K and some even 8K, which is a very, very big file size. And for 3D, that would be potentially an issue, but for 2D, it's not so much a problem. And the other thing about it, which Harry was talking about, was that it travels internationally very well. You don't need to have, all you need to do is dub your characters into a different language, and into German, into French, into Indian, or whatever you want it to go into. It goes into any kind of culture very, very, very quickly and very, very easily. So the industry in this the ecosystem basically, is at one end you've got content drivers, the people like Netflix, Amazon, BBC, broadcasters, Apple TV. They're all wanting content, so they're all demanding, and they all want the latest stuff as well. And then you have sort of all the studios that are kind of producing the content, but the education side of things is a very, very important part of it as well, because effectively, you are the kind of future, if you like, of the talent. And without the educational institutions and the courses and the programs around, there will be nothing to feed the studios with the new talent. So you are very much part of this ecosystem. And every kind of studio also, wants to have the fresh young talent. They want the new shows that will actually make their studios look really kind of current and exciting. So I think a lot of studios are very, very open to talk to kind of new talent, and they will often get involved with universities and institutions such as Escape as well. The shortages that we're kind of really finding at the moment in 2D are several areas. Riggers, Harry just explained really what rigging was. If you are a good rigger in Harmony, you can pretty much walk into a job anywhere you want at the moment. There is such a shortage for 2D riggers who can really get your heads around those kind of those complex characters using the master controllers. And that's something that some people like. It's not for everybody, but the people that do like rigging really embrace it, and it's such a kind of fantastic part of the workflow, because a rigger has to be technically minded. They need to be able to solve problems and also understand animation at the same time, because in order to build a good rig, you have to understand that an animator wants to take that character and stretch and squash it. They want to pull it around. They want to kind of deform it. They want to play around with it, and you need to understand the needs of an animator. So that's why there's such a shortage, because it's such a skilled sort of niche, if you like, someone who's technically minded and also understands animation at the same time. Also, there's a big shortage of technical directors at the moment. The technical director is the sort of is often as a team of them, but there's the kind of people that look after the whole flow of the kind of production. It could be someone that looks after the kind of the special effects within the kind of compositing side of things, looks after the pipeline, the rendering side of things. So technical directors are very sought after as well. They are sort of very, very technical. You have to understand all sorts of coding and scripting as part of that kind of role as well. Character animators are also in short supply, but character animators, particularly in rigged animation, unfortunately, there's less demand for animators who are working in the hand-drawn style, frame-by-frame animation. There's not so many productions using that at the moment, and I think that there is a decline in that kind of animation, purely because it just costs so much. To give you an idea, an animator who animates frame by frame, hand drawn, would probably on a feature film produce 3 or 4 seconds of animation a week, on a good week probably. Whereas someone who's animating using a rig in 2D would do 30 seconds a week easily, no problem. That's in a bad week, sometimes up to a minute, 60 seconds. So as a producer, you're paying that person's wages. The budgets of the film are going to increase 10 times at least if you implement hand-drawn animation. It looks lovely, everybody loves it. I mean, in an ideal world, it'd be nice if everything was hand animated and everything looked like traditional hand-drawn animation again. But unfortunately, the reality is that studios need to find ways to make their productions viable. And that's where Toon Boom are working hard to kind of make sure that the budgets are kept, for productions, and the pipeline is as efficient as possible. So rigged animation is the way forward really for 2D for the majority. Of course, there's always going to be hand-drawn animation, but to be realistic, if you wanted to sort of go and work in the studio, the chances are it needs to be kind of cut out or rigged animation. And also, in terms of studio production staff, people that go in who are good at managing teams of people, who are good at organizing schedules, that can look after the general flow of the studio on a day-to-day basis. There's always need for production staff in any studios, and there's a big shortage of those people as well who understand the animation process. There's always a shortage of good storyboard artists. All this content being generated now needs people to kind of come up with the ideas for the stories. And animation editors as well are very, very short supply. A lot of people that go into editing tend to veer towards live action to work on big movies or in television. And they kind of sidestep, the animations, the world really. But animation editing is actually a very, very skilled. It's very different to animating live action. And so anybody that's interested in editing, then there's an animation editor is well sought after. And then compositors. There's always a requirement for compositors who can, that's the kind of final polish, if you like, of a shot. Bringing together all those different elements into a finished piece, so making it look really nice with the lighting and the shadows and the kind of the quality of it. That's where the kind of the shot is pulled together, and that requires someone who's with great cinematographic skills, a great eye, great sense of color, and that's a rare person as well that works in that. Well, everyone's got an eye that works in animation, but to have that specific kind of cinematographic look is quite rare. So if you are a compositor, then there's plenty of work out there for you as well. Okay, in terms of so just very, very quickly, in terms of a 2D animation pipeline, I mean, you're probably all aware of the workflows of animation, and it, and 2D is no different to 3D. It's pretty much the same kind of process. You're split into 3 areas, effectively: pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production, it's really kind of that whole part of the production on a series, for example, where everything is kind of where the writing takes place, where the development, where the kind of concept of the whole show is pulled together. And that could take years. Sometimes pre-production can take longer than the actual production itself, because you're pitching the project, you're trying to raise the finance, and all that kind of stuff. So it can take a long time. But once you get your show commissioned or it gets greenlit, then you can go ahead and get the writers on board, get the thing written, record the voices, which is normally done up front as well. On a series, they're often done in batches of episodes, or it might be done in little sections if it's a feature film. But whatever you need, when you're working on a particular piece of animation, you would normally expect the voice to be done up front, so you have something to animate to. The art direction and the design is all taking place at that time, where so the art director will be kind of pulling together the look of the whole show. Storyboards would be done at that point as well, so that the storyboard artist would come on board, and typically on an animated series, a storyboard artist would take one episode completely. If it's a series of in the UK, we tend to have shorter length times of episodes than we perhaps do in North America. So typically a show might be 11 minutes long, in which case a storyboard artist would take on that whole episode. If it's a longer format run, like a half-hour series, then maybe 2 or 3 storyboard artists working across each episode. The animatic is, the kind of the black and white moving storyboard, if you like. So that's where you kind of pull together the pace and the timing of the whole episode. Once that animatic is then completed and locked, it's then into music and sound design. So the musician will take away that sort of moving storyboard, and the sound design would also start to take place as well. Then you move into production. So then you have what we call scene planning or layout. So the scene planner would open up the Harmony file. As Harry showed you, you can export directly out of Storyboard Pro into Harmony. You start to put together the basics of what that shot needs, what background it needs, what characters need to be in it. The camera moves, they can be set up by the layout artist, and basically deciding what the character needs to do in that particular shot. The rigging takes place all the way through the production. I mean, rigging is obviously for the principal main characters, but anything that moves more or less in a piece of animation needs to be a rig. So even something that's a dustbin or a flower pot, if it's been thrown across the room in the scene, or it moves, then it would need to be effectively a rig. It might be a very simple rig and might only take 20 minutes to make, but if it moves, basically it probably needs to be classified as a rig or a prop. The background artists will then sort of draw up the backgrounds to make sure that the kind of everything is consistent throughout the production, so that is drawn up and placed into the scene. Then it goes into animation. So the animators would take the rigs and they would put life into those characters to make that and bring that shot alive. And they might be working across several characters. There might be several characters in a scene, depending on what it was, but all the lip sync and everything that Harry showed you earlier on with the characters would be done by the animators. And the animation might be a team. A lot of studios have teams of animators, so they have a lead animator or a supervising animator, and then maybe animators, and then there may be junior animators as well in that role. So there definitely are entry level positions for you guys to get into studios at a more of a junior level to start with, to get up to a production level. Effects animation is really important as well, because in a lot of scenes, for example, you might have some smoke coming out of a fire. You might have shadows, specific shadows. You might have, I don't know, water or anything like that, which is basically not character, is done by the effects animators. And that's a very sort of niche area of animation, but a very kind of enjoyable side of it as well. So if you kind of love animation, but you don't necessarily want to do characters, then effects animation is a really interesting sort of career move. And then we go into compositing. So pull all that, like we've just seen, pulling all the shot together, for it to be finally rendered out for the final thing. So compositing is part of that pipeline as well. And then you sort of, once that production's all finished, those shots are then rendered. They're approved by the director, whoever. Then they go into post-production. So and that's normally done outside the studio. It's some big studios have their own post-production departments, but more often than not, a studio will work with a post-production facility who will edit the picture, dub the sound, mix the sound, bring everything together to the final quality that it needs. And quality is a really, really important issue for the post-production people, because broadcasters and streamers like Netflix or Nickelodeon or whoever they would be have very, very kind of tough quality control measures. So everything has to be absolutely technically perfect. And then it's delivered. So that's kind of the pipeline. And what we do at Toon Boom is we try and sort of cater for the animation pipeline and workflow as much as possible. So we have Storyboard Pro for the pre-production stage of the production. You move into Harmony for the actual animation and production, and then we have Producer, which kind of looks after the sort of management of the whole sort of the tracking and the management of the whole project. So I think what we're alluding to is the fact that it doesn't really matter what your skills are. There's a job or a role somewhere within the kind of animation ecosystem, whether you're more of a technical person, whether you're more of a drawer, whether you're an artist, whether you love movement, or whether you like more of the management side of things, or the organizational part of things. It's really kind of up to you to kind of find what your strengths are, really, and then and the things that you like doing, rather than sort of thinking of animation as a sort of a whole thing, a whole generic thing. I mean, while you're a student, you probably will do pretty much everything, which is really important to do as a student. But generally speaking, when you move into a studio, studios tend to be looking for people that are perhaps skilled in one or two particular areas, rather than sort of more general people. Smaller studios, having said that, may look for people that are kind of good at pretty much everything. But in terms of TV series and feature films, they tend to be much more departmentalized. Across the UK and Ireland, we have sort of hotspots of animation, if you like. London is still kind of a pretty big centre for animation, but there are other areas in the UK and Ireland that are hotspots. Now, this is not saying that this is the only place you're going to find animation studios, because you can find animation studios in very many towns and cities throughout the region, but there tends to be clusters of studios in these kind of areas that are on the maps. So I think if you were kind of coming from one of those places, or you live in one of those places, then you could probably freelance and work in a number of different studios and sort of make your living quite nicely. What has the impact of the pandemic been on the animation sector? Well, I can tell you from what I've kind of experienced in the last 18 months, it's actually gone mental. It's gone through the roof, really basically because the demand for content has gone up massively as well. People have been sitting at home in lockdown watching content on Netflix, and everybody wants to show more stuff. So there is a massive demand for stuff. And what it's done also, which is interesting, is that it's actually brought new audiences to animation that we didn't really have before. There's now animation's been done for much, adult audiences, much more kind of sort of more niche kind of genres, if you like, more kind of subsectors, if you like, of animation, which you wouldn't have thought of before. So it's really opened up audiences, and I think that's here to stay. I don't think that's going to go away. I think now that audiences have got a taste for watching more animated content, they're going to want to see more. And like I said before, there's a lot more technology around, which animation is always at the forefront of as well. So there are, quite a lot of opportunities out there now for skilled animation people. And I think, just looking around at some of the job sites, you can see out there, or websites for studios, they're always very specifically asking for particular roles and vacancies for these studios. So just as a quick kind of, someone answered, I think someone asked a question about where do you look for these kind of job opportunities. And I think really you just got to look around for looking for studios, find a studio that you like the look of, and go to their website. There's nearly always a section on their website for careers and jobs. So check that out and see what they're looking for. And understand, try and sort of get your head around what it is they're looking for as well. If it says riggers, then that's what it is. Don't go for a rigging job unless you do have some kind of knowledge or a passion to want to do rigging, because they are like we saw, they're very specific jobs. Social media is being used a lot at the moment for promoting jobs. Twitter and LinkedIn tend to be the sites that I see a lot of kind of opportunities come up on. Things like Instagram are also used by lots of studios as well, but Instagram is really good for kind of the artists themselves, being such a visual sort of platform. But I think LinkedIn and Twitter are kind of pretty much the mainstay for a lot of these kind of opportunities. There are also lots of job recruitment sites out there now that specialize in jobs, and they're free to join up with. As someone who's looking for an opportunity, that I think basically what you do is you just register for them, and it's free, and then you get notified of any jobs that come up that in an area that you're interested in. I think the way they make their money is, that when a studio advertises for those jobs, they pay the money to advertise those jobs. And there's lots of networking events. So like the one now, this is a sort of a networking event, if you like. Unfortunately, we're not all in the same room together, but if we were, you would be talking to each other and having a beer afterwards and all that kind of stuff. And that's really kind of still quite important. So try and get yourselves to as many kind of these events as possible. When we start having more kind of real events, in-person events, that's your opportunity to go up and talk to people and meet people, and talk to other people who are in the same position as you as animators. And of course, word of mouth is really good. Once you do get a kind of job in a studio, you will probably find out that say, for example, they're looking for a background artist. That one of your mates is a really good background artist, and perhaps you could recommend them. So that's how the word of mouth works, and it's a really strong thing to have. And I think as you spend more and more years in the industry, you start to know more and more people, and the word of mouth is actually quite a powerful thing to have. But remember, that word of mouth starts in your most immediate network. So those people that you're studying with at the moment in your class are your most immediate network, and they will be kind of potentially letting you know about opportunities coming up in the future. So just in terms of very, very quickly, what you need to apply is just you need to have some kind of show reel or a portfolio, which needs to be kind of appropriate to the job that you're going for. So if you are going for a job as an animator, then make sure that you've kind of got animation on your reel, and also be very clear and specific to show what you did on it. Did you do all the animation, or did you do the key animation to it? So just be as specific as possible. And it's also quality, not quantity. You don't need to have a 10-minute show reel. A lot of show reels are just a minute long, or even less, 30 seconds. is enough to have an idea of what you can do, and just put your best stuff on it as well. Don't put like 10 minutes of your worst stuff and then put the best thing at the end. Just make sure your best stuff is up front, because if you're bearing in mind that people are going to start watching these, then you might watch a batch of showreels at the same time. You want to grab their attention, so put all the best stuff on first. And like I say, it's quality, not quantity. And also, when I say appropriate showreel, if you're going for a job, or on a preschool children's series for CBeebies, don't put stuff which is like extreme violent anime or something like that on your reel, because that doesn't really kind of correlate to what the job you're going for. So you don't have to have just one reel. You can have several show reels for different types of jobs. So just have a look go around to, look at YouTube or Vimeo, and just look at some other artists' websites and showreels to get an idea of the sort of things that you need to put in your own showreel. If you're more of a still image person, say you're into character design or storyboarding, then obviously your website or your portfolio is going to be kind of more still. So the Instagram is probably good for you. Or just a sort of general blog page, that sort of thing is good for still image work. You still need a CV. Everyone know, your resume is very important of what you did, but always remember, I always think, when I was working in a studio, I would also look at what that person was good at in terms of extracurricular stuff. Not, and they might be the best animator in the world, but also, are they good in a team? Are they good working with other people? Have they got responsibilities? So if you've worked in a shop, or you've been a taxi driver or something, anything you've done is really, really critical to kind of give that person who's looking at your showreel and your CV an idea of the sort of person you are. They want people that can really fit into a team and work well in the studio and be professional. So those kind of things are really important as well. Don't just put your artistic or your creative endeavors. Also put on your what we call soft skills. They're just as important. And also put a cover letter. So a little, just don't send your showreel off with a link and that's it. Just do try and write a few paragraphs to that studio to say why you want to work with that studio. Just do your homework and do a bit of research and find out, what the history of that studio is, the best things they've done, have they won any awards, who are the key personnel that work in that studio, just so that you kind of then can start to engage in some kind of conversation with that studio. And just on my last slide is just talking about, animation. It's a very global industry. Toon Boom has, we have studios using Toon Boom tools in over 130 countries at the moment. So if you fancy traveling and working in somewhere a little bit more exotic, perhaps, then why not? We've got studios working in Toon Boom all over the world. And some very nice places as well. There's a studio on the Reunion Islands, which is a amazing island. Almost like a paradise in itself. And why not spend a year or two there working on a production? If you want to work in cities, we've got studios in Vancouver and London, obviously in London, and Toronto, New York, LA, Berlin, Rio, anywhere you can think of has got an animation studio, and there will be people using Harmony. So if you kind of learn Toon Boom, it's a very international kind of skill to have. And a lot of studios, you can work remote as well. I mean, the studios that are in the UK and Ireland are now using artists from all over, and they're all working in their home territories at the moment because of restrictions. But I think that's going to be much more of the norm in the future. We're talking about a lot of studios that are, considering or have done already of giving up their kind of their studio space and just downsizing, so that there's, why do you need to pay rent for 250 people when half of those are going to be working at home, or they're only going to be working in the studio maybe 1 or 2 days a week? So I think studios sizes are going to reduce to save on costs, save on rent, and people like to work at home. I think studios are now going to be offering the choice, really, whether you want to work in-house all a week or maybe a couple of days. And I think in a way, the animation industry has in a way always been working like that. So anyway, that's me done.